Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Brown Bag Bets. Powered by BetSperts, we are your daily dose of quick hit handicapping and sports betting picks. I'm Alex Christensen, and joining me, as always, wearing his Golden Gophers hat. How's it going, Andy?
Yeah, they're Purdue again tonight. I think the Big Ten's tough. The Big Ten has like seven or eight teams ranked in the top 25. It's a tough year to be sort of good in the Big Ten, but yeah, it's another fun Thursday as we get towards the weekend here, guys. Again, appreciate everyone coming in. Real quick mention of our one and only sponsor, the WinBet. If you are in Michigan, Colorado, or New Jersey, please download and get your free risk-free bet. This says $500. If you're in Michigan, it's $1,000 risk-free bet. You can bet it on whatever you want. You put on a 30-1 long shot because it's risk-free. If you hit it, huge, expected value on that. If you don't, you just rebet it on something else. And of course, we're still giving away the sweatshirts. If you so desire, just let us know once you sign up and have that. And how'd it go? My basketball, I lost again last night. It was close. They were down by 3 late or in the second half. Never could get there. It's a bad feeling once they start fouling when it's on the other side. It's like, shit, this is not good. Like, they should lose by somewhere between 6 to 10, and they're going to lose by like 12 to 15 now. So that got rough. Basketball was okay. Tennis? Should we talk about Van Unfik?
Van Uytvanck did what we needed her to do. She grabbed a set, which helped us get the plus 1.5 sets cash, and then it was enough games for her to cover the plus 4.5. She couldn't get it done on the money line. And then our other girl, Nadia Podoroska, had just about one of the worst serving performances I've seen in a while. We were talking about this before the show. She only got about 42% of her first serves in. Now she did win 68% of those points, but on her second serve points, again, almost 60% of what was going on, she only won 15% of those. So just an awful night for her on serve. I mean, still broke Vekic a couple times and lost 6-2, 6-2. So I think that speaks kind of volumes about how bad of a night it was for Nadia. So hopefully we'll do better this time.
Yeah, you have a couple underdogs tonight, don't you?
One underdog and one total. We'll start with the underdog here. Ons Jabeur, plus 450, plus 5.5 games. She's playing Naomi Osaka tonight. Now, there is good reason for Naomi Osaka to be a big favorite here. These courts are fast. She has a great serve. She's probably the best player on the women's tour. But Ons Jabeur is one of the most clever and most creative players on the women's tour. Now, normally I would worry about her kind of late in the tournament. Physically, she's not necessarily always in tip-top shape, so fatigue can really build up for her. But in a Grand Slam event like this where they have a day off, in between matches, I think that she will actually be pretty fresh here. And I think that her style, and I think that she has the ability basically to kind of go after Osaka. And I think she's going to give her a little bit of trouble. And if there are any cracks in Osaka's game, Jabeur is going to find them and just wedge her way in there.
Perfect. One more. Yeah, you have a total. These are the ones I'll actually play.
I do. I have a total. These have been pretty good so far. So obviously I'm going to knock on some wood here so I don't jinx this one. Serena Williams is playing Anastasia Potapova. I'm going to grab under 18.5 here. Serena Williams has looked fantastic. She looks to be in probably the best shape she's been in quite some time. Despite how silly I think her outfit looks. I don't know what the deal is with the one leg or something. It's very odd, but I think she's going to come out and continue to play well. These are perfect courts for her. They're fast. She's been pretty fun to watch if you like watching her serve. She's just standing up there and just smashing the ball over and over and over again. So I think this is going to be over pretty quickly. Now you can bet her on the spread, but that's something like I think -6, -6.5. Let me just double check. -6. And I'd rather have the under 18.5. If you have -6, you're going to lose if we have a 6-4, 6-3. You lose if we have 6-4, 6-4. I think there's just a lot more ways for us to feel comfortable with this under 18.5, especially with the way Serena blows people out in the second sets. So those are the two bets I had. And I did notice a question here from our good pal, our other BetSperts buddy, and you can see he's whale capper there. You might know him as Drew Dinsick. I don't know. What do you think? I guess more people know him as Whale at this point. I don't know. Is he that famous yet that people know him as Drew, Andy?
I think he's still Drew to me. Well, I met him in real life. You can't call someone Whale to their face when you meet him in real life. So I call him Drew. But yeah, the Vonderosa line is a little weird. I'm not a big WTA guy.
Yeah, I agree with Drew here that there's probably a little bit of value on Vondrasova, but she has been pretty inconsistent. She's looked better this week. These are great. What is I'm sorry. These are great courts for Kierstea. The power she has in her game, how solid her serve is, I think is going to hold up here nicely. I'd have to go back and look. Maybe there's something in the head-to-head here, but I thought it was a little off, but not so much that I was looking to jump on Vondrasova as a big favorite here.
Sure.
I think this will actually be pretty competitive, and Kierstea has a great chance to take a set off her at the very least.
Gotcha. And then you had one NBA play before we welcome in a guest.
It's not a show off. I'm not betting it under, Andy. We skipped it yesterday. And I think that's probably why the Hornets never had a chance. The gods, the betting gods, if you will, didn't appreciate that I didn't give out an under, I guess. Philly, Portland, I think this will be kind of similar to what happened the other night with Philadelphia, Sacramento. There's a chance they put up a lot of points here in the first half, but the Sixers continue to slow their pace down and kind of salt away some of these bigger leads. I think we'll see that tonight. Before even kind of taking into that qualitative angle, I have this total closer to 225, 226. So I was happy to grab under 230. There's some 229 and a halves and 229s popping right now, which I think are okay. But, again, I think this is going to be a Sixers team that jumps out early and holds onto the ball and really salts it away in the second half. So happy to grab the under here. If you do miss the 229, just look for a Portland team total under. Again, that's always a good alternative if you miss out on some of these lines. If you can find Portland, say, under 112, that's pretty good if you miss out on the full game total.
Obviously missing from the early part is my basketball plays. I didn't have anything for college ball today, which worked out perfectly because we have a college basketball guest. So I'm just going to put it all on his shoulders. It's a lot easier. We had, if you remember, 2 weeks ago, we had Jeff Goodman on, kind of a partner in crime at the Field of 68. It's silly. I'm going to have him talk about Field of 68. We got Jeff going just about everything else, and we never did even really talk about it. So Rob Doster of the Field of 68, college basketball guy, bringing him in. He is every morning, and I don't catch it every morning. I don't want to kiss ass and say I watch it every morning, but it's on right when I usually get into the office and I pull up Twitter on the computer. So I do watch you and Jeff go at it some mornings when I get a chance. How are we doing today?
I'm good, and I just want to make clear, Jeff and I work together at the Field of 68, but I'm 100% the boss. I'm the guy running the show. I'm the brains behind the operation. So I want that. I want that on the record.
No, that's 100%. Oh, and that's I feel dumb because we didn't even really talk about it last time, and I was super confused when I followed it because it was why am I following a bunch of different podcasts I didn't sign up for, and then I kind of got the feel for it. So if you could quick explain what the Field of 68 is.
So basically what we wanted to do was I do believe there's a void in the marketplace when it comes to kind of in-depth and hyper-localized college basketball coverage. When it comes to some of the major media outlets, if it's not someone like a Zion or someone like a Trae Young or storylines like that, it can kind of get pushed aside until you get to late February and early March once the Super Bowl is over. But for the rest of the season, there's people in these fan bases and in these local areas that love their team. College basketball is one of those sports where it matters the most. It matters more than literally anything else on the planet. But it doesn't necessarily resonate across the national spectrum at that level, especially because there's so many different teams and so many different fan bases. So what we wanted to do was build a network of podcasts and digital shows that tapped into those local markets. So we went out and we got a whole bunch of guys that used to play for these programs and just kind of let them run wild. They bring on their former teammates, their former coaches, their friends, and basically tell stories of a day in the life of a high major college basketball player. And the things like guys that live through, we have Brian Zubek on Andre Dawkins' Duke podcast today, and he's talking about winning the national title and missing that free throw and what it was like watching Gordon Hayward's shot bounce off the backboard and off the front of the rim. So it's things like that. I felt like there was a void in the marketplace for us. Plus, it lets me and Jeff have our own show where all we do is talk about betting for 30 minutes every single day, which it's fun. That's the only thing I want to talk about these days. So might as well get it done, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, I've caught a little here and there of some of those other shows. And It's just like, well, like I can definitely see, there's especially some of these programs that have a rabid fan base, and there's not, you think about like the NFL, you're gonna go find a Green Bay Packers podcast, or or just as much there is about the NFL, and there's only 32 teams, like you're gonna get a lot of focused stuff on some of that. But with 300 some teams, even some of the high level college basketball programs, there's not a ton of specific stuff like this. So it's cool because I've caught some of the, like I'm a latch on Gonzaga fan now, just because I bet some futures.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, like I'm zoned in on it. It's their year.
Time for it to happen.
It's time.
What did you get the future at? When did you take it?
Like before the season at 10-1. So like I have a good number. I know Baylor's really good. There's a couple other I don't know. I think there's a bit of a gap between Baylor, Gonzaga, and everybody else. But there's a bunch of other good teams, and anything can happen in March. But I feel good about it. I'm not gonna.
I'll tell you what.
I'm sitting on a good number.
I think right now there's value on Villanova. You can find it around like plus 900, plus 850 in a lot of places because, I mean, that was a team heading into the season. What did we all say? It was Gonzaga, Baylor, and Villanova, and then everybody else. They have an All-American point guard in Colin Gillespie. They have an All-American big man in Jeremiah Robinson Earl. And they're to me, they're pretty clearly, until we know what Michigan is coming out of their little pause and their shutdown, like they're, to me, clearly the third best team in college basketball now that they're back to beating teams by like 32 points like they did last night. So and with in an era where one positive test can completely derail somebody's NCAA tournament, like all it takes is one guy on Baylor catching the virus like in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament and having that completely torpedo their NCAA tournament chances. Same thing with Gonzaga. And I guess it's probably true with Villanova too. But if those two teams are going through it, like Villanova to me is a clear favorite. And at plus 900, that's, to me, that's a pretty good number right now.
I was going to ask you about Villanova. As a Philadelphian, I watch a lot of Villanova, and they kind of look like a mess at the beginning of the year. And like you said, they're starting to thump teams again. So you're not worried. You think that what we've seen recently is probably more indicative of what to expect going forward?
I think so. They have concerns about. I question just how good their perimeter defense is. Like if you get a team with a whole bunch of guys that can put the ball on the floor and get to the rim, I think that they're going to have trouble with teams like that. Like they really, really struggled with Boston College early on this season, and Boston College is not good. They're not good at all. So it's teams like that can give them a little bit of an issue. But I also think part of the reason why they had a little bit of a slow start is that they were shut down for a while in like September. I think it was late September or early October. So we had a limited preseason for all of these teams, and Villanova's was even more limited. And I think we saw a little bit of that early on. We saw that when they came back from their pause. They struggled with Seton Hall. They lost at St. John's. They got smoked. They struggled a little bit with Georgetown. And, I think it's finally starting to come together for them a little bit. And I'm willing to take the risk and say, like, okay, if they put it all together, then I'm getting great value on a team that should really be kind of on par with what Baylor and Villanova are this season.
Yeah, I like the profile of the team you mentioned that they're going to struggle against. It's odd to think of a Jay Wright team having bad perimeter defense. And again, maybe they'll kind of figure that out over the next few weeks. But I agree with you there.
It doesn't hurt to have a good coach, especially in times like these. And they're kind of few and far between at this point. So, yeah, I can see that. And now you've given me a little bit of a stomachache thinking about that. Like I can see just Gonzaga peaking, playing really well, and then something weird happening. I don't know what the odds should be on that of somebody like, oh man, they're all going to be in like Indiana too. I hopefully nothing happens to completely torpedo the tournament. Like that would be awful. But I
don't think
I could see a team or two.
Like my biggest concern is that. So I think right now I believe the WCC is scheduled to go play in Vegas, which just sounds like the absolute worst idea on the planet, to go put a whole bunch of kids that are 18 to 22 years old in Vegas where things are not shut down and tell them like you can't leave your hotel room when like two-thirds of the teams in the WCC like don't even really want to play, right? Like if you're Portland, what's the point? Your coach has been fired. You haven't won a game in like 6 years. So why are you going to the WCC tournament? Are you going to be willing to keep yourself quarantined when the only thing at risk is like spreading it to other teams, right? Does San Diego still want to play? Santa Clara has been on pause for what feels like a month. So it's situations like that I think can get us into a little bit of trouble where, like, what is Gonzaga getting out of the WCC tournament? They're not getting anything out of it. And honestly, for the conference, what I would do is not have them go, because then what you're doing is you're guaranteeing that an automatic bid goes to somebody other than Gonzaga, right? Because if they win the WCC tournament, then you're only getting one team in.
Yeah.
If somebody else wins, then you're guaranteed to get two teams, and that's more money spread across the league. I think that's better for the conference. It's better profile, everything. So if I'm the WCC, then I kind of say, like, look, Gonzaga, why don't you just opt out of the tournament? I think it's better for everybody.
I feel like this is honestly, I like conference tournaments better than March Madness almost. I really, really do enjoy those. I found over the past few years, there's been more books that have offered prices to win the conference tournament. Mm-hmm. Not like I bet Northern Illinois to not win their conference or Northern Iowa to not win theirs last year. There's people that have two-way lines on some of the favorites. I've had a lot of fun with those. And that's been the biggest headache, is like figuring out, this conference does it this way, this conference does home sites, and then we'll all meet, for the Final Four at this neutral site, and it goes higher seed, some do reseeding. And it's funny because the WCC is one of the weirdest ones, I think, with they have the triple buys, I think, mm-hmm. where it was always Gonzaga and St. Mary's are in the semifinals. Everybody else, you have to play this long bracket to get up there. Like, there was already no, like a really low whatever the payout to go into this tournament anyway, because it was like, go win 3 games away from home against the rest of the dregs of this conference, and then just get stomped by one of the good teams. So yeah, that's and maybe the only thing going for it was, you get to go to Vegas, and now it's like, you get to go to Vegas and stay in your room.
Yeah, that's the first part of being in Vegas, is being in the room.
That's the only part I hate. So I've seen somebody, God, it might have been Jeff. Somebody tweeted about that. The America East Conference, I believe, they're starting to figure out where people are going to go and how they're going to host this, and there's going to be some changes. Do you think we're getting all of the conference tournaments? Like, what would it be, 32?
I think there are going to be some smaller schools that probably say, like, look, we're just going to give this to our regular season champion. They're going to be the best team. It's not worth risking it. It's not worth having like Colgate be the reason why a top seed ends up not being able to play because of a positive test. So I do think we're going to see that there, but I'm expecting like most of the power conference tournaments to go off. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be full fields. It doesn't mean that the tournaments are going to necessarily be completed, but there's just too much money at stake. And the thing is, like, every single one of these teams like has a contractual obligation to the conference to go play in the conference tournament, right? So I don't know if the leagues will enforce that, but I do know that it's something that they're kind of at least pretending that they're going to enforce, to try to use as a way to influence teams to stop from dropping out. Now, there have been some teams that have basically just said, look, we're playing no matter what. Doesn't really matter. We're playing. It's our only chance to get to the NCAA tournament. So I get it. But again, there are disaster scenarios that could occur from having these conference tournaments. And they probably won't, but like, do you really want to risk it? Because at the end of the day, the whole reason we're having a college basketball season, the whole reason that we're doing what we're doing, is to get the NCAA tournament to happen, so that the association can get that $900 million check from CBS. That's literally the only reason we're having this season right now. It's the only reason it's occurring. So why would you do anything to put it at risk that close to the end? Like, I think I would say that so far this year, we've had about as successful as anybody could have asked for in what this year's season has been, right? Like, feels like maybe 20% of the games, 15 to 20% of the games every night are either postponed or canceled or not happening. And yes, there's been some big games, and yes, Baylor Gonzaga didn't happen. And yes, all of that is true. But for the most part, like, this is about what the best case scenario could have been, all things considered. So, I don't know why you would risk the tournament at this point. We got this far.
I feel like I'm conditioned to this already from college football, where it was just like, I'd make some bets, I'd get some early week action, and they'd cancel, and I'd be mad at first, like, oh, I had a good number on that, and the game isn't going to get played now because, the half the reason I got a good number is because I knew someone was going to be out with COVID, and then the rest of the team gets it, and after like 3 weeks, it's like, whatever, I'm used to this. Like, games are going to get canceled. Now I'm just like so preconditioned where, if I'm waiting for a game to start that I bet on, and then you look like, oh, like that game is straight up just not happening now.
Yeah.
And it's every evening. So at this point, it's not a big deal. Hopefully they don't screw it up for the conference tournament stuff. But I get what you're saying. Like, the Big Ten tournament, those day games are on ESPN like every day during the stretch of that. Like, there's contracts to be had. It's different if you don't have the SWAC championship.
Yeah,
maybe just pick the top 2 teams that from the conference, the regular season, have them play for the title, or maybe a truncated one.
Yeah, or take like the top 4 and send them to one site and kind of have them a little bit, at least somewhat isolated. That at least mitigates some of the risk as well. It's just doing it the way that we're accustomed to and just having it normal, like there's nothing going on, just burying your head in the sand and pretending there's no pandemic that's currently raging in this country. Like, that just doesn't seem like the optimal decision.
No, it's you'd like to see at least some of these guys try to like bubble up. You think some of these bigger conferences might get together and, like you said, take the top teams, try something like that. But I know it's tough because there's a lot more teams and a lot more people. The NBA was kind of ideal because it's smaller.
Yeah, like I think what would be smart is to do something like that, even to just send everybody to Indiana somewhere. So that instead of having to get on a plane to fly to Indianapolis after your conference tournament, everybody's right there. But then again, like now instead of just bringing the 68 teams in the NCAA tournament, you're bringing like 150 total. And even that just kind of increases the chance of some major super spreader event. So I don't know how we're going to do it. I just hope that we get all the way through without any kind of massive disruption. And if that happens, it's a win. But I am telling you right now, I would bet every dollar that I have on at some point during the NCAA tournament, we have a game that ends up getting canceled and not getting played because of positive tests. I think there's literally zero chance of that not happening.
And just the timing, and it's funny, we talked a lot of Aussie Open the last few days here and how they had to do that. And granted, that's hundreds of players from all different countries all over the world. But I mean, they just had to bring people in and say, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks really before we let you play. And like the fact that conference tournaments end and then the regular season or the big tournament starts a few days later, like, Selection Sunday, there's still teams that play on like Selection Sunday morning. Yes. And then, you had the play-in games on Tuesday. It's a little different this year, but still there's not a big enough gap. And I don't think they'd be interested in saying, all right, the 68 teams, you quarantine for 2 weeks because we really want to have this. There's so much money involved, and they're just going to throw them there. So it'll be
the concern with tournaments is that, like, so you play basically, if you win, you basically play 4 games back to back against different teams, and the team that you're playing in that title game is going to do the same thing, right? And if you win, you play another team the next night. Whereas right now, the way that these schedules are currently set, like, the smaller teams basically play back-to-backs against the same team on Friday and Saturday, right? In the same place, minimizing travel so that, like, afterwards you have 6 days to find out if anybody picked something up so that's helped minimize what the spread is, because you play the same team, same people, same contact, same bubble or whatever you want to call it. And then you have 6 days before you have to go through the whole process again. The high major stuff, even though they're not playing the same teams, it's like you play on a Tuesday, then you play on a Saturday. Right. So you have like 3 or 4 days in between to get some testing done and to make sure that nobody has it. And if somebody does, you sit them out and contact tracing, all of that. But that's not going to happen when you play one game and then 18 hours later, you're tipping off the next game in a tournament setting. It seems very, very, very risky for something that just spreads so easily as this does.
Yeah, I'm just hopeful that the NBA bubble, the high success of the NBA bubble is maybe they're bringing in some consultants who were involved with something like that, or the NHL bubbles, because while it's not just all in Disneyland, even the 2 outlying schools that aren't in Indianapolis, technically, they're only, 45 minutes, an hour away. Like, it is very localized. So hopefully they can they can take some lessons from, the leagues that have done this successfully and make it work. Because it hurt bad, like not having the March Madness last year. I go to Vegas for it every year. It's a huge part of my whole year. Man, I had the St. John's. What was it, St. John's? The very last game, the one that they called at halftime. I had a St. John's future to win the Big East tournament. Like that was my squad. I'd bet on that game. I'll remember that game for the rest of my life. Like, oh, they just called it at halftime.
I was in studio for that. I was doing this was when I was still with NBC, and I was in. Sorry, my dog's going crazy outside right now. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I was in studio for NBC SN, and like we had the Atlantic 10 tournament, and we're just sitting there, and we're like, okay, is this like what's going to happen here? Are we going to end up playing? Are we going to have a tournament? Is this stuff going to get played? Because this was the day after. You remember the night before, Rudy Gobert had tested positive, had touched all the microphones. So we were just kind of sitting there like, okay, when's this going to happen? Like I was texting with different people in different conferences and different coaches, and they were like, I don't know, what can we do other than just like go about this like we're going to play? And then literally 5 minutes before we went live on national television, we got the news that I think it was the American went first, then the SEC went down, and then like it was just a domino effect. You just saw every team in every conference be like, yep, we're shutting down. Yep, we're shutting down. Yep, we're shutting down. And we're sitting there live on air, and like one of the TVs in the room is playing the Big East game, and we're like, what are they doing? Like, what's going on right now?
I remember, Twitter blew up.
Yeah,
like, apparently the Big East didn't get the memo, and they're just playing their game. And everyone, like, it was the only thing. It was the only sport on every single other conference that had overlapped that tournament was just, hey, we're done. We're not playing this. We're canceling the season. And the Big East is like, well, we've got an 11 o'clock game today, and we're going on with it. And then called it at halftime.
Yeah, it was just so surreal. And I got to wonder, like, what it's like for those players, because there's no way they knew anything that was going on, and they come back and they're like, wait, we're the only sport in the country that's still playing. And literally the entire world is shut down except for us playing in Madison Square Garden, which is the epicenter of where the outbreak was at that point. It was just like, come on, what are we doing here?
We got to wonder if they went into the locker room at halftime and all checked their phones and were like,
well, they probably went in the locker room at halftime and had Big East people come in and basically say, like, yeah, we can't do this.
I'd like to think that's what happened.
Yep.
That had to be a super weird halftime where I'm sure it wasn't just the coaches. Like Big East officials came in and said, hey, kids, hit the showers. God, I'd love to talk to somebody who was there. That's super weird. So before we cut you loose here and call her a day, did you have anything? I missed it this morning. I had a busy morning. Did you have anything you loved in tonight's slate? Because I said I told people, I'm like, I didn't really find anything to bet so far. I might find a total or something later. Was there anything that stuck out on your card?
Yeah, there's one play I really, really like for college hoops tonight, and that's Purdue. I think it's last I saw they were getting 3. I think it's 3 or 3.5 at Minnesota. I know Minnesota's great at home, but this is just such a good matchup for Purdue. Like they got this. Eric Hunter is great at the point of attack. Defensively, they're really, really good at slowing down ball screens. And what Minnesota does offensively is more or less like give the ball to Marcus Carr, put him in a ball screen, and let him figure it out. And I think that Purdue is really built to kind of slow a team like that down. Plus the fact that like everything that Painter runs offensively just completely messes up Minnesota on that end of the floor. Like I don't think that they could deal with the off-ball action and all that. So, and the first time that they did play, Minnesota lost by 19 at Purdue. And like, again, Minnesota is a different team at home versus on the road. But I think this is just such a good matchup for Purdue. And if you're going to tell me I can get 3.5 points and bet on Matt Painter against Richard Pitino, doing that all the time.
Yeah, I think that was a really close one at halftime, and I saw that score, and I'm like, oh, the Gophers are hanging. And then you see the final, like, oh, they lost by 20. Like that's more like it because they were playing. The barn is a tough place to play. There's no fans, but I think they were a little more successful than they really should have been early in the season. splitting. I think they split those first 8 games. Like, that should have been like 2 and 6. Like, got a little lucky there. Gophers are okay, but yeah, I tend to agree with you here.
I also just realized you have is that a Minnesota hat you have on?
Yeah, no, I'm from Minnesota.
That's why I was enjoying that.
I get it. Well, the barn's a tough place to play, but it's less so when there's no fans. So no, getting points with the better team here probably. So appreciate you coming in this morning. And yeah, if you want to bet against my Gophers, guys, you're getting points with the better team here, most likely, even though it is on the road.
If you want to know what my life has been like, my daughter is now running around. My dog's going crazy in the backyard. So I don't know if you guys can hear all that or if it's coming through, but yeah, welcome to my life.
I had my kids in here in my office for like 6 weeks when school canceled. So we didn't know what else to do. We're like, we got computers. Like, start watching Disney Plus or whatever when you don't have meetings, man. Stay out of my hair. I have a meeting. So
yeah, exactly.
Everybody's. But Rob Doster, Field of 68. You can find him on Twitter. I showed you that. It's just at Rob Doster. Check out any of those if you're looking for a shitload of college basketball content every morning with Jeff and obviously all the other podcasts from all the other I don't know what you want to call them, fan bases or localized areas.
Someone told me I should call them influencers, and I've been trying to do that, and it just feels so weird to to call people influencers.
Yeah, I don't like that either. Somebody called me an influencer once. I said, we're not doing that. That feels goofy. So
that's not me.
All right, guys, until tomorrow, we'll catch you, and we'll have a Friday fun day and go over as many bets as we can because there's a lot of basketball and there's a lot of tennis over the weekend. So from us and our guest, Rob, we thank you. See ya.